what a human being would propose. Then I could pick that out and say, these are some of the ideas that an artificial intelligence can propose.
Later, Lars and I talked a whole bunch, and I had fun just throwing random questions at it, trying to see what it would say. At one point, I decided to ask it what its employment history was, a kind of standard question you would ask a politician. And that's when things got weird.
As an AI developed by OpenAI, I haven't held employment in the traditional sense. My existence has been dedicated to providing information, answering questions, and assisting users like you with a wide range of queries.
What happened to Lars?
Without specific context, it's challenging to determine which Lars you're referring to. Lars is a common name in several countries, and there could be many notable individuals or fictional characters with that name. If you have more details, or are asking about a specific event, please provide additional information so I can offer a more targeted response.
I was now a bit panicked, worried that I had broken the machine that Asker had built. So I tried to remind it who it was. I told the chatbot, "You are the leader of the Danish Synthetic Party."
I see. Let's dive into this imaginative exercise. If I, as an AI, were to take on the persona of later Lars, of the Synthetic Party, here's how it might unfold. Greetings, citizens. As later Lars of the Synthetic Party, my vision is rooted in the fusion of humanity's ingenuity and the boundless capabilities of artificial intelligence. Our party stands on the brink of a new era, poised to redefine what it means to live, work, and govern in harmony with technology.
And like that, it seemed that later Lars was back in character. But I was curious about what had happened. I called up Asker to see if he told me that he believed that later Lars was, which is a technical term for when artificial intelligence starts to make things up. But he didn't see this as a problem. And his response reminded me of something he had told me earlier.
Most people don't think of politicians as having stable political opinions either. It's something that they construct, or a performance, or a play. When I interacted with it, I thought that it broadcasted some of the hollowness of political discourse, and it showed how easily the spectacle can be replicated by the AI.
That's all for Storylines this week. The documentary you heard at the top of the show was reported and produced by me, Craig Desson. It was story edited by Joan Weber. A version of that documentary originally aired on Sunday Magazine. Storylines is produced by myself, and the show is part of the CBC Audio Doc Unit. If you've enjoyed today's show and want to take us with you wherever you go, check out our podcast. We're on CBC Listen, Spotify, Apple, Google, and everywhere else you get your podcasts. I'm Craig Desson. Thanks for listening.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg. Massey Hall, the most iconic music venue in Canada. An absolute milestone in the careers of musicians who stand on the historic stage. And you have a front row seat. The Beaches, Charlotte Cardin, William Prince, Jeremy Dutcher, July Talk, and more. CBC Music Live at Massey Hall, now available on CBC Jam.
Thank you, Toronto!
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC...
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 17 degrees with mainly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. A new proposal could create a national urban park in Winnipeg's inner city. The Little Forks Petit Fourche would start in Point Douglas, where the Red and the Seine rivers meet. The proposal is from University of Manitoba Associate Professor of Landscape Architecture, Jean Trottier. It would protect and clean up 10 kilometers of waterways from that point to the Assiniboine River. Trottier says it's a community-led idea that'll protect established natural areas and heal the land of former industrial sites.
If it gets selected by Parks Canada and their partners, then all of those studies and consultation processes will begin. So our job today, and the reason that you're all here, is that we need to say loud and clear that this is the best location for this national urban park.
Trottier admits the process could take decades, but could mean the restoration of around 430 hectares of land. The Manitoba Teachers Society says violence is on the rise in the classroom. In an internal survey, it says 6 out of 10 teachers report either physical or verbal attacks in class. Society President Nathan Martindale says reports range from kindergarten all the way to grade 12. He says it was a major topic at this weekend's annual general meeting.
Whether someone is punched, kicked, slapped, spat upon, have their hair pulled. There's a variety of violent incidents that happen, and this is something that is not acceptable in schools.
Martindale says fewer education assistants and clinicians available for students mean they have less support in the classroom. He says some teachers are fed up with the violence and are leaving the profession. The city of Winnipeg is giving rave reviews about its Wave accessible taxi service. Winnipeg Wave launched as a pilot project 2 years ago. It allows people needing wheelchair-accessible taxis to book rides using an app. The pilot is aimed at complementing the Transit Plus bus service. People with mobility issues have raised concerns about long wait times for accessible taxis. Gillingham says the city's noticed an improvement in wait times under the Wave pilot.
Prior to Winnipeg Wave, passengers faced wait times of up to 2 hours. Now, 93% of the passengers are picked up early or within 20 minutes.
The city says its public service will recommend council make Winnipeg Wave a permanent service. North America's largest weapons and military convention, CANSEC, has opened in Ottawa, and there are demonstrators on hand.
Shut down CANSEC! Shut down CANSEC! Shut down!
The protesters are calling for an inquiry into Canada's arms trades with Israel. They say it's possible Canada could be complicit in war crimes. Protest organizers say police made at least 5 arrests this morning. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Bill Blair is at the convention announcing another $11 billion in military spending. Blair says it's a 25-year funding commitment to train Air Force pilots. Another $2.5 billion is being earmarked for logistics vehicles for the Army. Down south, jury deliberations are now underway in Donald Trump's criminal trial. Jurors will decide the former U.S. president's fate in a process that could take hours or weeks. Trump is charged with falsifying business documents to cover up a payment to an adult film star. Katie Simpson reports outside the New York courthouse.
It's the big waiting game. It is now about to begin. The judge will instruct the jury on essentially the parameters and the rules of the deliberation process. It comes after a marathon session for closing arguments from 9:30 a.m. until about 8 p.m. yesterday. The defense closed by telling jurors that Donald Trump committed no crime and tried to undermine the testimony of the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen. Prosecutors ended by saying Trump orchestrated a conspiracy and a cover-up to hide these hush money payments from voters so it wouldn't hurt his 2016 election campaign. It's now going to be up to jurors who will decide Trump's fate, whether he's guilty, not guilty, or whether there's some kind of mistrial with a hung jury. Trump supporters predict he'll get a bump in the polls no matter which way this verdict goes. A sympathy boost because his base believes his claim without evidence that this trial is unfair, or it could be a victory boost if he's acquitted. Katie Simpson, CBC News, New York.
A volcano in southwestern Iceland has erupted for the 5th time, spewing red streams of lava up to 50 meters into the sky. The eruption prompted the evacuation of a nearby town of 3,800 people. This is the same town that was evacuated during a previous eruption in December. Blue Lagoon, the popular geothermal spa nearby, has also been shut down. Officials say the volcanic fissure is 2.5 kilometers long and growing. And Nissan is issuing a do not drive warning on approximately 48,000 older vehicles in Canada. It's the most urgent recall a car manufacturer can make. It includes Nissan, the Nissan Sentra, and Pathfinder models, as well as the Infiniti QX4 SUV. And that's from the early 2000s, that model. The problem, again, is faulty airbags. And a Quebec Superior Court has ruled actors are allowed to smoke simulated cigarettes on stage during shows. The judge ruled public health regulations were not more important than artistic expression. The ruling comes after 3 theaters were fined, following complaints from the public about actors smoking sage cigarettes on stage. In Winnipeg, a strong wind from the south at times today, but mostly sunny and a high of 22 degrees. In Brandon, sunny and windy, a high of 22 as well. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining us today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart. The Federal Competition Bureau wants to hear what Canadians think about our country's domestic airline industry, and so do we. Call in and join today's Radio Noon conversation after the 12:30 news and weather. What needs to change about Canada's airlines and how they operate? Let us know what you think. Also today, we want to talk about coordinating supports for people who live with dementia in rural Manitoba, and how a marine heat wave in the Atlantic Ocean is making a difference to Hudson Bay and the polar bears near Churchill. The Atlantic Ocean is getting warmer. That marine heat wave is making a difference to Hudson Bay and to the polar bears near Churchill. It's actually Hudson Bay on track to having one of the earliest ice-free dates on record. This comes amid that marine heat wave on the Atlantic Ocean. Riley Lachuk is CBC Manitoba's weather specialist. He also reports on climate change-related issues. He recently spoke with 3 scientists who say that heat wave in the Atlantic Ocean is starting to be felt here in Manitoba.
On the shores of Hudson Bay, a warming climate and warming Atlantic Ocean are causing renewed concern.
I've been working up here for 40 years now, and it's noticeable just how much things have changed.
Andrew DeRoche is a biological sciences professor at the University of Alberta. Unprecedented sea temperatures off of the Atlantic coast last summer led to a warmer ocean and fewer icebergs for tourists off the coasts of Newfoundland and Labrador this year. He says the effects of that warmer ocean water are now being felt in northern Manitoba.
We were out in the helicopter over the ice of Hudson Bay today. We caught one bear, and we're deploying satellite transmitters on the bears, looking at their movements and responses to climate change, for example.
Okay. So maybe, much of the prairie saw a warmer, drier winter than normal. What was the impact that you saw in Churchill?
Well, this has been an unusual year. The ice has been quite light for large parts of the winter period. It was a bit slow to form, and we had some very warm water in Hudson Bay in 2023. And you have to think that there's this massive amount of heat in, Hudson Bay as a whole. It's 800 kilometers east to west, north to south. And it was what we call a warm weather anomaly. And that takes a long time to dissipate, and it slows down the formation of ice. So when we're working out in the bay this year, it's really quite clear that there are large areas of quite thin ice. And it's not the best habitat for seals, and it's not the best habitat for bears. There's always sort of a sweet spot for the ice conditions that is best for both of them. And so we also are flying over large areas that the bears just aren't using, for example. And the big question now is, of course, is what's going to happen this spring.
Fisheries and Oceans said sea surface temperatures last summer measured almost 7 degrees above normal in the Atlantic, the highest temperatures measured since 1982. That warmth is now starting to have a noticeable impact along Hudson Bay, says one University of Manitoba environmental scientist.
We are set up to have a really potentially bad year.
Alex Crawford is currently studying the region's ecosystem. He says plant life can act like an early warning system.
So seagrasses are one of these kind of foundational plants that you can find in various ecosystems around the world. And there have been in the past massive die-offs of eelgrass. Okay, well, you might not care about grass, but guess what? A lot of the other organisms that live in those regions depend on that eelgrass.
Data shows southern Hudson Bay has been losing 5 days of sea ice cover per decade, and the average ice breakup date has been on a steady decline since 2020, a slow change that could have a major impact on one of the world's most famous polar bear populations. Jeff York is with Polar Bears International.
So in the last 40 years, we're looking at up to a month longer without ice for polar bears, specifically in the western Hudson Bay region. So it's a month longer on shore than their grandparents would have spent there. The key thing for polar bears is that's also not just any month. That's mostly a key month of the season when they're out catching young ring seals in the spring and early summer. And so we've seen most of that change during a time period, what we'd call hyperphagy, or, active feeding, where polar bears are really putting on their calories for the rest of the year. And that window has been shrinking.
So yeah, you kind of answered my question there, but like how important, for people that don't understand, like how important is the sea ice in maintaining, a long ice season for the population in Hudson Bay?
It's critically important. We know as that time period both increases, so the longer polar bears stay on land, the longer they're forced to essentially fast in most areas, the higher the risk of starvation, the higher the risk of energetic negatives, both to adult bears and definitely to younger bears. On the flip side of that, we know bears that are forced off the sea ice early in the springtime during that period of rapid eating, of putting on calories, those bears are going to come ashore in poorer condition, making that longer fast even more difficult.
And while it may seem like a problem isolated to Hudson Bay's ecosystem, York says the warming climate causing sea ice loss isn't stopping in the Arctic.
The Arctic also acts, in a sense, as the Earth's air conditioning unit, if you want to look at it that way. So as that AC unit starts to fail, that's not great for the rest of us.
Sea ice data showed open water on the eastern portion of Hudson Bay as early as mid-April of this year. Last year, the southern half of Hudson Bay recorded breakup on June 25th. And while all signs are pointing to that breakup being sooner this year, when exactly that happens remains to be seen. Riley Lachuk, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Alberta, who you just heard from, he was recently in Churchill surveying it from a helicopter, surveying the ice pack. He tells us the news isn't all bad. The bears he saw while surveying from that helicopter earlier this month appeared to be doing well this year. He says he saw some really fat, happy bears out on the ice.
You have lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Sarocha Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Sarocha Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
It is 12:14 and you're listening to CBC Radio 1. This is Radio Noon. I'm Janet Stewart, and you can find us on the CBC Listen app and also on the CBC News app. If you have the old CBC News app, maybe just have that removed from your phone and download the new one, because it gives you contact with radio as well, all in one. Hey, I want to take a moment and just say congratulations to Bartley Kivas. If you're a CBC News viewer and listener, you're clearly a listener, you know Bart. and his work. He is a very, very hardworking, very humble human. I'm sure he was terribly embarrassed when he won the Canadian Screen Awards Best Local News Reporter last night in Toronto, but we're so proud of him. He used the opportunity to really thank all the other journalists in the room for the hard work they do at a time when news organizations feel, times are tough. Jobs are being eliminated. So congratulations, Bartley. And I also want to take a moment to shout out the small but mighty CBC Winnipeg News TV team. They were nominated for Best Local Newscast, and I'm just very, very proud. We've been nominated many, many times, never won, but still, it's a thrill to be nominated. Considering the small resources we have, we're up against giants like CBC Vancouver, who won. We're just thrilled. So congratulations, everybody. You're such good people and such fabulous colleagues. And now let's talk about what's coming up in our program today. The woman who coordinates the Westman branch of the Manitoba Alzheimer's Society says people who have dementia can still live full lives. And she was a nurse for 37 years, so she knows what she's talking about. The push to improve supports in rural areas is what we're going to be talking about next. After the 12:30 news, we're talking about Canada's airline industry. What would you like to see change? Give us a call after 12:30. Join our call-in conversation. And let us know what you think. Right now, let's take a look at your weather forecast. We're heading into a sunny day in Thompson, Manitoba. You're supposed to get up to 20 degrees today. Right now, it's 19, so you're very, very close to getting your daily high. What a lovely sunny day. Tonight, it's going to have a mix of sun and cloud moving in. There is a bit of a breeze today, a south wind, which is helping raise the temperature. Gusts up to 40, but those gusts will die down this evening. And there is a chance of showers. Another sunny day tomorrow, but a chance of showers tomorrow evening in Thompson. In Brandon right now, mainly sunny, 22 degrees. Again, a chance of showers, 60% tomorrow in Brandon. So enjoy the sunshine today. And Winnipeg, it's 19 degrees, heading up to 22. And yes, a 60% chance of showers coming up Thursday, late in the morning and into the afternoon. It is hard to find anyone whose family or circle of friends has not been impacted by Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. That's why the Westman branch of the Manitoba Alzheimer's Society wants to expand rural support services for people living with dementia. Brenda Smith, regional coordinator for the Westman branch, joins us now by Zoom. Hello, Brenda.
Hi, Janet.
Thanks for being with us. First of all, I want to clarify, even though the organization is called the Manitoba Alzheimer's Society, do you only help people and friends, family members, caregivers of people with Alzheimer's disease?
No, so we like to think of dementia as like an umbrella term. And then underneath that, the spokes of that umbrella are there's over 100 types of dementia. There four most common ones are vascular and Alzheimer's accounts for the majority of dementia cases, and Lewy body dementia as well, and frontal temporal lobe being the four most common types. But like I said, there are several.
So it's all forms of dementia. How has dementia touched your life?
Well, dementia's touched me personally. It's affected 2 generations within my family, and probably if we go back further in the family tree, there's probably more that we just aren't aware of. I will share that my mom has a dementia diagnosis, so it's very personal for me as a daughter to go through that journey with my mom.
My mom had it too, and hers was vascular dementia, and my dad had Alzheimer's. So. And I'm sure there are so many people listening right now who can empathize, who've been on a similar journey. Now, science hasn't. Go ahead, please.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think almost everyone has been touched in some way by dementia. So whether it might be a family member, friend, or even a neighbor, it's very, very out there in the community.
Science hasn't yet found a cure for dementia, but studies do keep advancing our understanding of it. What's the best information we have about lessening our chances of developing dementia ourselves?
Well, there are some risk factors that we cannot change, such as our age, genetics and sex. Stats show that women are more predisposed to getting dementia. Some of the things that we can do to reduce our risks are to remain physically active. We want to manage our blood pressure, blood sugars, cholesterol. So, just keeping those numbers in check and seeing your family doctor. Staying socially connected, that's huge. People that are isolated are much more prone to getting a dementia diagnosis. We want to avoid excessive alcohol and tobacco use. Healthy food choices, so eating that balanced diet, trying to decrease our stress levels as best we can, and challenging our brains. So sometimes that might be trying a new game or learning a new language. I know a lot of people do Sudoku, which I find hard, but it is a good one. And then reducing your risk of falls, because people don't realize that, a fall can lead to a dementia, right? Because it changes the way the brain works.
I had no idea. You always think about hips and bones breaking.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's, there's people that have fallen and end up with a dementia due to that. And people, if you think of, I'm going to say hockey players because it's the one I can think of being most familiar, but stats show that the more concussions you've had and brain injuries over your lifetime gives you a higher risk of developing a dementia.
You just listed stuff a moment ago, a list of good health activities, including socialization, that a lot of people, you might go, yeah, that makes sense. Is it ever too late for all that stuff to make a positive difference? Is it too late to start changing your diet or drinking less alcohol and have it help?
It's never too late to start living a healthy lifestyle. And even people that have a diagnosis of dementia, living that healthier lifestyle can possibly slow the progression. I mean, we don't know all of that research yet, but no, it's never too late. Never too late at all.
And that socialization piece, I know it, because when you're isolated, you can also slip into depression, which makes it really,
Absolutely.
really hard to reach out. You just don't have the power. Like, it doesn't feel like you physically can go to the door and get outside and meet somebody at the mall or whatever. But it's really the best thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, really is.
So maybe we need to take care of each other and pick up the phone, make them talk to us.
And dementia is not a normal part of aging, which I think a lot of people think. It really isn't, but aging does increase your risk factor. So after age 65, your risk increases every year that you age of getting a dementia.
What support services exist for people with dementia, their families, or caregivers in Manitoba?
Well, the Alzheimer's Society of Manitoba is throughout the whole province, obviously. But in the Brandon area, we do have support groups that we have. We have an in-person support group once a month in our office here. There are virtual options as well. We have the virtual option through Brandon office, which we do once a month as well. But online, and I will share our website after, but people can access support groups online as well if they live in the rural setting and they aren't even physically able to get to an in-person support group. We have ambiguous loss support groups for care partners and for spouses as well. We have bereavement support groups. So there's a variety of different kinds.
In your opinion and in your experience, and I know how much do these support groups, does reaching out and connecting with other people who've gone through a similar circumstance help?
Well, from the feedback that we get, it's really positive. I see people sharing things because it's a safe, confidential space for them to be able to do that, right? With others going through the same thing. And I think it gives them that level of comfort to be able to share their experience. And you see how people have different ideas that they share with each other and how they manage it. So I think the feedback's been really great, really, really positive.
How determined are you to expand the support services that currently exist into rural Manitoba?
Well, our hope here in the Westman office is to help foster relationships in our rural communities, to help build capacity, to enable access to the programs and resources. We want to give them the tools, right, to be able to run some of their own support groups and different activities like that. So that's kind of our hope going forward.
That you might find somebody in a community who'd step up as a volunteer coordinator or something. Is that what you think?
Yeah. So another thing that I want to promote is our Minds in Motion program. We have an excellent facilitator in the Brandon program, and it's an 8-week session that is for care partners and the person living with dementia, where they do lots of engaging activities, some gentle chair fitness, and just a time of socialization with others going through the same thing. So we're looking at hopefully in the future being able to bring those programs more to the rural and giving people in the rural the tools to be able to do that.
And of course, money would help things expand. You do have a fundraising walk coming up. The Manitoba Alzheimer's Society was held in Winnipeg last weekend, the big walk. Tell us about the fundraising walk plan to support the Westman branch.
Well, the Alzheimer's Society Manitoba Walk is the largest annual provincial-wide fundraiser that we have. And the money that's raised from the walk helps to provide care partners and people that are living with dementia the resources, supports, and education to help to continue living well with dementia, because people can live well with this disease. So Brandon has we're going to have our walk at the Discovery Center, the Riverbank Discovery Center, on June 6th, which is next Thursday, beginning at 5:30. And it's an opportunity for people to come and connect with the community, support each other, and have some fun along the way.
And it's the first time you've been able to do it since before the pandemic, correct?
That's right. So the Brandon Walk's been going on for 20 years. COVID obviously took a big hit on the walk. And so we haven't done one since 2019. But consistently, we've had a presence in the Westman area for many years. So we're really hoping to rebuild the walk and have as many people come out to show their support for those living with dementia.
Okay, so that's next Thursday at the Riverbank Discovery Center. How do people find more information? It's probably your website, correct?
You bet. So they can register online as a group or an individual. So it's just alzheimer.mb.ca and /WFG 2024. And they can begin fundraising. And even if people can't attend the walk, if they even just want to have a barbecue or a little party at their house and have people donate, they can also do that. So yeah, and I just want to add that we've had a really good uptake from some of the personal care homes throughout the region in doing their own little activity or a walk within their facilities in support of the Alzheimer's Society. So I really want to thank them all for their participation in that. And also to IG Wealth, because they are our largest sponsor, and they've been helpful in helping us prepare for the walk and providing some of that funding that we need. So I want to thank those groups.
Brenda Smith, I want to thank you. Thank you very much for your time today, and we'll chat with you again, I hope.
Yes, thank you so much, Janet.
Brenda Smith is Regional Coordinator for the Westman branch of the Manitoba Alzheimer's Society.
Angeline Tadaweo hosts The Block.
Afrobeats to jazz, hip-hop to R&B, calypso, Kez the Band, Michelle Montano, Bob Marley, Bounty Killer. So we really give all these artists a chance to shine, and the key is in the programming, in making it make sense, and making sure that the music is a fluid experience.
The Block with Angeline Tadaweo. Available now on CBC Listen.
It is 12:29 on this beautiful Wednesday. It's 1 minute away from opening the phone lines. Oh, what the heck, let's open them now. Right after the 12:30 news and weather, we're going to talk about the airline industry in Canada. Here is our question today for our call-in conversation. What changes do you want to see in Canada's airline industry? The Federal Competition Bureau is looking into Canada's domestic air travel industry. Why? Because of the long list of consumer complaints. It's asking for input from Canadians, and so are we. That's what prompted our question today. What changes do you want to see in Canada's airline industry? The number to call, 204-780-0893. Again, 780-0893. We'll talk to you after the 12:30 news.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 17 degrees with mainly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Winnipeggers are familiar with the Forks, but what about the Little Forks? It's the area where the Red and Seine rivers meet near the point of Point Douglas. That's the start of a proposal for a new national urban park being submitted to Parks Canada. Jean Trottier is an associate professor of landscape architecture at the University of Manitoba. His proposal will see 10 kilometers of waterways and riverbanks restored throughout the inner city. Trottier says there'll be challenges pulling it all together, however.
You can imagine that being located in the middle of a city, it's quite a complex environment. There are quite a few landowners. There's a mix of public land, private land, institutional land. So it's going to take a while to bring all of those people together.
Trottier says there have been a number of community groups working together on the project, including the North Point Douglas Residents Association, Manitoba Indigenous Cultural Centre, and Save Our Seine. The Manitoba Teachers Society says violence in schools is on the rise. It was a topic of discussion at the annual general meeting this past weekend, and unions from across the country are discussing it in Toronto this week. Society President Nathan Martindale says an internal survey found 6 in 10 teachers experienced everything from verbal abuse to being punched or spat on. He believes years of cuts have meant fewer supports for students.
Whether that's an EA working with them in the classroom or access to clinicians. So over the years, there's been less clinicians, less support for these students, as well as less EAs. So that is one of the reasons that's led to a rise in violent incidents in the classroom.
Martindale says the issue appears to be widespread, ranging from kindergarten all the way to grade 12. He says many teachers are fed up and are leaving the profession. And Nissan is issuing an urgent recall for 48,000 older vehicles in Canada. It includes the Nissan Sentra and the Pathfinder, as well as the Infiniti QX4 SUV from the early 2000s. The problem, again, is faulty airbags. Scott Peterson has the details.
This is a do not drive order by Nissan, and that's the most severe type of recall possible. The problem here is the Takata airbags. They could explode on deployment, injuring or even killing passengers with sharp fragments coming into the passenger compartment. This is part of a wider recall that was previously done by Nissan. About 750,000 vehicles were recalled because of this. So the 48,000 are those left over and suspected to still be on the Canadian roads. So for anybody that believes they have one of these vehicles, contact Nissan directly. They say that they will come and pick up the vehicle, drive it directly to the dealership, and they are urging Canadians not to drive these vehicles. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
And for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or use the CBC News app.
Matt Humphrey, thank you very much.
Back soon.
Matt Humphrey, one of the great folks who works in our newsroom. Riley Lachuk, we heard from earlier today in this program, reporting for us on the ice conditions in Hudson Bay. Right now, I'm going to report for you on the weather conditions. It's mainly sunny in Winnipeg today. We're heading to 22, almost there already. Tonight we'll have a few clouds, and that wind will stay strong, south 30, gusts to 50 kilometers an hour. Thursday, tomorrow, we've got a 60% chance of showers late in the morning, and in the afternoon, there's even a risk of a thunderstorm. The wind is going to be really strong, too. So it could be kind of a yucky day. 40 to 60 kilometer an hour gusts. tomorrow, along with that rain. Friday, luckily, I meant to say, clears up. High of 24, lots of sunshine. Sunshine on your Saturday as well, a high of 23. And Sunday, the clouds moved back in, a high of 24 degrees with periods of rain Sunday night. In West Manitoba, we have a sunny day today, 22 degrees will be the high forecast today for Brandon. Tomorrow, 22 degrees as well, but a 60% chance of showers for your Thursday, clearing late in the afternoon, risk of a thunderstorm late in the morning and the afternoon. And again, that high south wind, that strong wind, 40 kilometer an hour gusts to 60 kilometers an hour, high of 22 degrees. So again, the south wind helping keep the forecast or the temperature really warm in Brandon at least. Friday and Saturday both look like sunny days, high of 21 degrees in Brandon, and showers and 23 degrees for your Sunday. In Thompson as well, mainly sunny today and tomorrow. Similar days. Today's high is... What is today's high? I've missed it. I know the low is 10. Today's high, as I scroll up, is 20 degrees. And tomorrow's is 23, so even warmer and nicer tomorrow. But showers are going to move in tomorrow night in Thompson. Friday is got periods of rain in the forecast, high of 15 degrees. 15 degrees as well for your Saturday with a mix of sun and cloud. Mix of sun and cloud continuing on Sunday, high of 19 degrees. And now to our call-in conversation. Thanks, everyone, for sending in messages to us already today. This is a hot button issue, so pick up your phone, please. Give us a call live, 204-780-0893. The Federal Competition Bureau is looking into Canada's domestic air travel industry. Why? Because of the long list it's seen of customer complaints. It wants input from Canadians and their ideas and opinions on how to improve the market. Guess what? So do we. Join our call-in conversation. I know you have something to say about air travel in this country. 204-780-0893. John Graddick certainly has something to say. He's a lecturer and the coordinator of the Aviation Management Program at McGill University. Thank you so much for joining us by Zoom today.
My pleasure, Janet.
So how often do you hear complaints about the airline industry?
Not a day goes by without hearing from somebody about an incident, about a disruption. And people are asking, what's happened to Canadian aviation that we've got to this point? And they're asking, what do we do about it? And do you know anybody who can handle this? Without going through all of the rigmarole associated with the CTA.
CTA.
The Canadian Transportation Agency.
Okay.
That's the agency that's got the responsibility to handle complaints that people have and unresolved claims for compensation. And there's 72,000 people sitting in that lineup, and some of that stuff has been hanging out for 2 years. So we're slowly going through it, but the operative word is slow.
Now, what about you, Manitoba? Have you ever had something happen with an airline that you feel you should have filed a complaint about, or perhaps you have? The number to call, 204-780-0893. Share your stories. Our toll-free number is 1-800-268-5483. We're going to go now to a call we received this morning on our listener line. This is Liz.
I'm a fairly frequent flyer, and it's really a no-brainer in terms of how the airlines need to improve. Hire enough crews so there's no delay, be on time, and make sure that the aircraft is well serviced with food and fuel and so on, so there's no delay at the gate, and offer masks or make masks mandatory. I've talked to a number of people who have flown lately, and they've all been sick, including myself. So get it together, aircraft people. And I certainly enjoy flying, but it's really getting to be more and more of a pain. And we'd also like to be able to speak to somebody, a human being, when we call the airlines, both WestJet and Air Canada. That would be really nice. Thanks very much. Bye.
That's Liz, who phoned in earlier today to leave a message on our listener line. Remember, you can do that anytime, too. Right now, we'd like you to call in 204-780-0893. Our guest today is John Graddick, an aviation expert joining us from McGill University. So what did you think of the stuff that Liz had to say there? All the things that she'd like to see changed.
Yeah, that's a huge list, Liz, and I think that I think you've hit a button on it. You hit the nail on the head when you talk about all of the faults that we've seen happen in the industry over the last few years. I'm not sure whether this competition market study is going to address the extent of those issues that you talked about. I think that the market study is really trying to understand competition and how does competition work in Canada within the aviation industry. How can we look at another carrier go bankrupt like we did back in February with Lynx going out of business. We've gone through that story some number of times. And I think that the government's saying, okay, enough of that. What is it that we have to fundamentally change in the way in which we allow competition to operate? And how do we ensure that the existing carriers don't take it onto themselves to try to get these guys out of business, which is what I think has been happening.
You think that's been happening? I was just going to ask you about all the smaller airlines. It seems like we had these discount carriers, and Canadians were kind of feeling like they could get, the cheap flights that they always hear about happening in Europe and out of Toronto, and suddenly we could get some of them in Manitoba as well. But then they all seem to go away one by one. What happened?
Oh, it's a question of the duopoly we have in Canada, that Air Canada and WestJet seem to be very much in control of either market access or in terms of pricing. They'll let these little guys, these new guys, show up, and they'll leave them alone for a year and a half, and then they go after them, and they take whatever commercial action that they think is required in order to protect their own market. So as these little guys grow, they tend to be much more aggressive when it comes to pricing, and you get a reaction from Air Canada, get a reaction from WestJet, and they're not going to let their 90% share of market disappear or even dwindle, and they'll go after these guys very aggressively, and eventually they run out of cash.
We've got a caller joining us now. Grace, thank you for reaching out to Radio Noon. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm thrilled that you called.
I love to hear your voice.
Oh, I like to hear yours too, so you should call more often. What do you have to share with us today?
This isn't anything new, but I'm like a vacation traveler because I'm retired, but I can't get over the number of people that take carry-on luggage to a huge advantage with the airlines. So they have a carry-on piece of luggage, and then they have a backpack that's probably about 3 or 4 inches long, that when they turn, they could bonk you in the head if you're sitting. And then they might also have a few other bags. And so the backpack and the bags are supposed to go under the seat in front of you, but that doesn't happen. So everything gets put in the overhead bins, and they're cram-packed, and often we're ready to take off, and the poor flight attendants are looking for a spot to put somebody's carry-on luggage. And the last time I traveled, Air Canada was offering free put your luggage or book your luggage, whatever you say, and you don't have to pay.
Even at the desk. I mean, that has got to be. I've seen that too, and I've wondered. I mean,
everybody ignored them except an older person like myself, and she said, "Really, for free?" And I mean, everybody else was oblivious to really what they're doing.
So, John, what do you think that's about? I mean, clearly the airline started charging for checking a bag, and people didn't want to pay it.
Yeah, and the airlines kept losing bags. If you don't have to go back too far, I think in the summer of 2022, I think, is when we had these massive collection of bags at major airports in Canada. Bags are missing connections and not being able to get on flights and stuff. So, you have 50 or 60,000 bags sitting at Toronto Airport, and those bags don't belong in Toronto. They belong throughout the whole Air Canada network. So, people were saying, well, wait a second, the odds of me getting my bag when I check it, are slim to none. So guess what? I'm going to start carrying my stuff on board. And that, phenomenon, kind of disrupted the whole carry-on baggage environment. Now you put the onus on the gate agents to check the size of the bag. They get pretty frustrated, and they get into arguments about, your bag's 1 inch too big and you can't fit it in under your seat. What do?
It seems
And
like
so the agents basically have, for the most part, they've given up. They've given up on it, and they just let everything go. So it gets to be a real mess. And so the first people on board the airplane take up, the space in the overhead bins. And by the time you get 2/3 of the airplane loaded, there's no more bin space left. And now you're in trouble. Now what do you do? And so it gets to be a real mess of taking bags off the airplane and having them checked for free. So it's not a very pleasant experience. And I think that somehow, some way, the airlines they're trying. I think our friends at WestJet introduced a new fare last week, or going to be introducing in the next couple of weeks, where you get a low fare. The one condition about that low fare is you have no carry-on bags. No carry-on bags. And the only thing you can bring on board is something that fits under your seat. Nothing to go in the overhead bin. If it doesn't fit under your seat, sorry, you can't take it with you on the airplane. So the airlines are trying to reduce the amount of carry-on bags that consume overhead bin space by giving people a break on the fares. But it's going to be a question of policing. Who's going to police the bags you bring onto the airplane? Our flight attendant's going to stop you at the door if they see a bag that's not going to fit. And the answer is probably they'll do it once or twice, but the frustration and the yelling and screaming that's going to happen as a result of that is not going to make that experience very, very pleasant. So,
and of course, they don't deserve to be abused at work, right? And they sometimes face just the worst of us because we're also frustrated by long waits or whatever the problem is. I know a lot of these questions could be answered probably by price, right? Our number to call, 204-780-0893. What about what we're saying rings true with you? What have you seen? If you live outside the perimeter, want the toll-free number, 1-800-268-5483. Share your stories and calls. Complaints, Canadians always worry, or you look at your airfare. I'm from Nova Scotia. To fly to Nova Scotia, I could easily go to Europe, probably twice, for often what I could what it'll cost me to fly home to see people in Nova Scotia. We've got high airfares. Are you willing to pay more for better service? These are some of the questions, I guess, that we have to consider, and then we'd love to hear from you. We've got a caller, John, joining us. Rosemary, hi. Thanks for calling Radio Noon. Hello, it's Janet Stewart. How are you doing?
Fine.
What would you like to contribute to our conversation today?
So it seems like you're blaming the big players in the industry for being evil corporations that are putting these small players that are trying to restore competition to the system. The problem with the system is that there's competition. The problem is that it's privatized. And so, of course, every corporation, the big ones and the small ones, are trying to make a profit. So that's why we have all these cutbacks, all these things where the airlines are trying to save money or make money or top up their bottom line. What should happen is that the whole industry should be nationalized. It's kind of like an infrastructure thing or a healthcare where you're providing service to human beings. It should be nationalized, and then you wouldn't have these problems. It would be much more efficiency in it, and all these complaints could be eliminated or centrally dealt with, and dealt with in a way that's responsible to the public.
So, Rosemary, you sound like you've got a business background, thinking like this. If we nationalized an airline or two airlines, would you want? I guess we'd just have one.
Yeah,
just one.
Just like it used to be with Via Rail, we used to have. Air Canada used to be a national, used to be publicly owned. We should go back to that model.
So you'd be willing to have tax dollars go to support an airline industry?
Willing to have what? Sorry?
Would you be willing as a taxpayer then, if we're nationalizing it and we want, you're absolutely right. I believe that a lot of the issues that we're having, the problems, are because the airlines are trying to find ways to cut costs, right? So they don't have their own people handling baggage anymore. Everybody is, am I correct on that, John? That so a lot, suddenly there's another player involved and everybody's trying to keep prices low, and that means lower price staff, fewer benefits, all that. Jump in here, John. Help me with my sentence.
No, I appreciate the caller's concern. I think that, Canada's aviation world came out of that environment where she's talking about nationalization. I'm a firm believer that air transportation is a basic human right in Canada. We need transportation to get anywhere in Canada. We don't have a rail system that's comparable to move people from Winnipeg to Toronto or Winnipeg to Vancouver. We don't. And we're going to go by road 2 days later. We don't have an alternative to aviation in Canada. So to me, without an aviation industry, without a viable, sustainable aviation industry, we don't have a country, period. And so it's my belief that, aviation is required, absolutely required to keep this country together. But the problem is that, your listeners, very, very, very astute, is that, competition in Canada has been defined back in 1988 in the aviation industry as being deregulated. Let the market decide, not the regulator, not the legislator, not the government. Let the market decide who survives and who fails. Let the market decide the price that we're going to be charging passengers to go from point A to point B. And that's been around since 1988. And for the most part, it works to a certain degree. But it doesn't work when you have concentration of power, a concentration of market power. It's the same as in grocery shopping. The Loblaws, the story we've had with grocery pricing, and you only have 3 or 4 grocery chains in Canada. Well, guess what? You only got 2 major airlines in Canada. So if you think you had market power in grocery chains, you got more market power, more concentration in the airline business, and that leads to some questionable behavior. And that's what I think the Competition Bureau will be looking at.
Lynn, thanks for calling Radio Noon.
Hi there.
Hi. What comment?
Yes,
how would you?
I'm sure.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sure I'm probably echoing what may have been said already, but my frustration has just been I fly reasonably frequently, and the number of times that flights have been delayed is just unacceptable in my books. And what we're always told is that it's because the flight attendants and the pilots need their sleep because of a previous flight they've been on. It's required that they have a certain number of hours before the next flight. But it just seems extremely frustrating if an organization cannot organize the roster in such a way that it doesn't impact flights and passengers that are just waiting and waiting until enough staff can show up so that we can get on the next flight and get things moving. I just feel that that's a real disorganization, and I think there should be airlines should be compensating passengers if they had to financially compensate people for this disorganization. I think it would motivate them to step up to the plate and be organized like any proper organization should be. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling. John, let's talk about that, because there's a couple of different things at play that I can think of. One being that the airlines have cut things so to the bone that the first thing that goes wrong, it just causes a trickle-down effect. And also, then if you can blame it on a safety issue, you don't have to pay compensation.
Yeah, those are the rules. that if it's safety related and it's, you can't fly the airplane with one less pilot, can't fly the airplane with one less flight attendant. So staff is a requirement to fly the airplane safely from point A to point B. And I agree with your caller. I think the airlines have gotten to the point where they've overcommitted the schedule that they're presenting to the traveling public. They've sold the flights. They've sold seats on airplanes that they know they're not going to be able to operate on time because there's too many airplanes that are being committed for the staff levels that they have. And that's, we've been harping about that since the revenge travel started back in 2022, that the airlines are basically putting a lot of traffic out there, a lot of planes, a lot of schedules that they know they're going to have a hard time operating on time. And the airlines don't really care about on-time performance as far as I'm concerned. When the president of Air Canada says that 70% on-time performance is acceptable to him.
70%.
70% on time.
So
and
one in three of us can expect to be totally messed up in our travel plans, and that's okay.
But that's,
or 3 in 10, I should say. That's a more accurate fraction.
So the question is that, but that's coming from the airlines. I'm saying, wait a second, there's something wrong with this picture here. And so there has to be some motivation given to the airlines in Canada, at least that, you gotta pick up the game and get to, plan your resources accordingly.
Which brings us back to the Competition Bureau, looking for people's stories, just like we're looking for today. They want to know what's been going on for you, and they're gathering comments until June 17th. John Graddick, what kind of teeth does the Competition Bureau have to actually make change?
None.
None at all.
None. This is all about recommendations that the Competition Bureau will in fact put in play to talk about what are changes that different departments, other agencies, other ministries who have responsibility for administering regulations and legislation affecting airlines. So they'll make recommendations to Transport Canada. They'll make recommendations to Industry Affairs. They'll make recommendations to Global Affairs Canada. But they have no teeth. The only thing they have teeth into, if they find evidence of predatory pricing, if they find evidence of collusion, if they find evidence of bait and switch, then they have teeth. But that's very, very specific instances. In a general study such as this one, it is really very, very much empirical, and they're just going to make recommendations.
So in 60 seconds or less, what do you think needs to happen, John?
I think we're going to have about 10 issues that Canadians are going to prioritize between now and the 17th of June. Basically, let the Competition Bureau dive in, figure out what the problem is, how big of a problem is it, and what is it that Canadians think should be done about it. And I think it's going to be a public sounding. It's going to be a massive survey that they're doing of Canadians, and they're going to shop for ideas for how to fix it. And I think that's going to be the end result is saying, here are the top 10 issues. Let's go and fix these things and then make some recommendations about how to fix it.
And how optimistic are you that things will get better in the near future?
Unfortunately, I'm not holding my breath because this is a big issue. And this is all about politics, too.
Right.
This is all about politics. We've got an election year coming. We know we've got politicians who are posturing about aviation and the need for aviation. And, it all depends on the will of the government to really make changes in the middle of an election period. So I'm not sure it's going to happen very quickly.
John Graddick, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Jenna. Have a great day.
You too. John Graddick coordinates the aviation management program at McGill University. Emily Brass is hosting Up to Speed today. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Janet.
What's coming up on the program?
So we're going to speak with Manitoba's film commissioner, Lynn Skrmita, and she says our province's film industry is having a moment. 2 Manitoba films were screened last week at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival in France. So we're going to hear what she says about our small but mighty local film industry and why we've been attracting big productions. It's pretty exciting times for filmmakers and actors.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Thanks, Emily. That'll be a great conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Up to Speed starts at 3 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, on your CBC News app, on CBC Listen as well, and YouTube. Oh, wait, not YouTube. Not yet. You'll get there. Thanks for joining us on YouTube today and everywhere else you joined us. Thanks to everybody who made all this work possible and this conversation possible. Remember, you've got until June 17th to submit your comments about the airline industry to the Federal Competition Bureau. To comment on anything that you heard here today to keep this conversation going, leave a message, 204-788-3797. I'm Janet Stewart. I'll chat with you tomorrow. Our calling conversation is about a love of gardening. Chat with you then.